get started. Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamayah Pradeepaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Parnaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetam Rudatuhe Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham tva sarva papebhyah mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. So welcome to our very last lecture on chapter 9, and we will start also chapter 10 today. Last week we discussed about the very last shloka, which is Mad Bhakta Mad, the last shloka, which talks about the 5 different ways in which we can approach God. And today we will do a kind of a summary of the whole entire chapter 9, right from the first shlokas, and we will also chant. We will do it a little differently in the sense we will chant the different sections and we will also summarize that aspect of it. So as we said before, chapter 9 is kind of very similar to chapter 7, but quite different from chapter 8. In chapter 8, we talked about more about Saguna Ishvara. And in here, we're talking about, in chapter 9, he starts off with the supreme secret, which is about really the Nirguna Ishvara. So chapter 8 was actually about meditation on the various attributes, various virtues of the Saguna Ishvara. It was Saguna Ishvara Upasana, one may say. And here we are talking about the Nirguna Ishvara Jnanam, which some people may say it's extremely difficult, but actually it is not. It is very easy. What is difficult is the practices that are needed for us to get the purity of mind, the clarity of thought. And once that is there, then Nirguna Ishvara Jnanam is so easy. It may seem quite kind of abstract, too subtle, but the subtlety is because our mind is very gross. Our mind is so focused on the gross aspects of what life is all about. But once we make it more and more subtle by improving this purity of mind, it is possible to get there. And that is what in chapter 9, in the beginning itself, he starts off with really explaining what is that truth, that secret. So it is a supreme science, it is a supreme secret. And here I'm just going to run through all the 34 shlokas, starting with, where we have the first 3 shlokas being the secret and the science. And then what is that secret? That is the part which he explains in 4, 5, and 6. And then after having said that, what is this secret of the Nirguna Ishvara? He actually comes and talks, the question may come in our mind then, is really God the creator? Is the God destroyer? Is he the one who is really responsible for everything that is going on in the world, including yesterday's declaration of the results of the elections in India? Is he really responsible for that? He says, so Krishna comes back and he says, no, I'm not responsible for the election. That is all because of you. You're the one who, if you are surprised by the exit polls and if you are worrying about, okay, what happened, that's all collective aspect of all of you. And that is where he comes about, discusses that specifically in the shloka that even last week Meena had asked, which is the shloka number 8. So it is, yeah, then he goes about, then he says, how is that Brahman which is indifferent or different? And then in chapter 10, he brings about the relationship between that aspect of Brahman and this Prakriti, which is what we are all part of. And then the question might come about, whether is he partial, can anybody recognize him? And he reminds everyone, yes, he's largely unrecognized. And that is because not because he's incognito, but it is because, again, as I said earlier, our mind is not subtle enough. Only when my mind is subtle enough can I recognize him or her or it, however we might want to qualify this God. And then he goes on, this 12 and 13, they kind of go together, where he explains about those kind of, he in fact calls mudaha, the people who are not able to recognize him. And then, of course, he follows up with who are the people who can actually recognize him. Then he talks about the different bhaktas, the prema bhakta, the jnana bhakta, then the sacrifice, etc. And then from there on, actually in here, there is more of the discussion of the three kind of bhaktas from a point of view of karma, bhakti, upasana, and bhakti. But here he talks about the bhavana, the attitude in which that bhakta approaches. And when we say the attitude, what we mean is by the attitude with the desire for materialistic things or things which can give me more punyam. And then he goes on to discuss the aspect of that bhakta who has no desire at all, but the only desire to be with that Lord. And that is where the shlokas later he focuses on. And then he goes on to describe of, the kind of offerings, how when we approach that God with absolutely no desire but to be with him, the kind of offering that can be is as simple as even a simple fruit, even a leaf. And it is said that, when Draupadi, who was one of the greatest devotees of Krishna, when she was very satisfied with this one leaf, it satisfied all the gods in heaven and they were so oversatisfied. So the Lord accepts the simplest of offerings. And so that was described. And then finally, the glory of that worship. But that worship is, how the Lord is impartial, just like we gave the example of sunlight. And then that devotee is never ever away from him, never ever destroyed. And then finally, what are the 5 qualities? So we discussed all this. So let's start to look at that a little more in detail and then chant it. So these are the first almost 11 shlokas. So we'll chant from here. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha Ath Navamodhyayah Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Tute Guhyatamam Pravakshyamyanusuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajnatva Mokshase Shubhat Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam pavitramidamuttamam pratyakshavakamam dharmyam susukam kartumavyayam ashraddadhana purushaha dharmasyasya parantapa aprapya mam nivartante mrityu samsara vartmani maya tatamidam sarvam jagatavyaktamurtina मत्स्थानि सर्वभूतानि न चाहं तेष्वस्थितः न च मत्स्थानि भूतानि पश्य मे योगमैश्वरम् भूतभृन्न च भूतस्थः ममात्मा भूतभावनः यथाकाशस्थितो नित्यं वायुः सर्वत्र गोमहान् तथा सर्वाणि भूतानि मत्स्थानीत्युपधारय सर्वभूतानि कौन्तेय प्रकृतिं यान्ति मामिकां कल्पक्षये पुनस्स्थाने कल्पादौ विसृजाम्यहम् प्रकृतिं स्वामवष्टभ्य विसृजामि पुनः पुनः भूतग्राममिमं कृत्स्नम् अवशं प्रकृतेर्वशात् न च मां तानि कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय उदासीनवदासीनम् असक्तं तेषु कर्मसु मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिः सूयते सचराचरम् हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय जगद्विपरिवर्तते अवजानन्ति मां मूढाः मानुषीं तनुमाश्रितम् परं भावमजानन्तः मम bhutamaheshwaram. So this was the first section where we will go back and just very quickly look at. So in the first shloka, Krishna is telling Arjuna that I'm going to tell you this biggest secret, and the reason I'm telling you is you are so pure-hearted. So he says this, and then he says this is the one and only secret that you really need to know to be completely rid of any kind of sorrows, any kind of sorrows. This is the only thing you need to know. And so then he says this is something which is available to everyone. It is an absolutely the royal secret, and it is by knowing this, it is a most purifying, and it is also something which is very aligned with dharma. If you follow this, there is just no question you'll go wrong at all. And it's extremely easy to perform and imperishable. And as easy it is to perform, like I mentioned with the Nirguna Ishvara Jnanam, that is what he's referring to here. As easy as it seems like, the qualification to get there is the most difficult. When I say qualification to get there is difficult, what I mean by that is because for a person who's very much in the materialistic world, it's extremely difficult. But as and when our own wants and needs become simpler and simpler and simpler, and we are convinced about it, to that extent, my mind becomes available for more and more for this knowledge. And when that happens, it's very easy to gain this knowledge. And this is why he says the very first qualification is the Shraddha, Ashraddha Dana Purushaha, Dharmasyasya Parantapa. So one needs that absolute Shraddha. And if we don't have the Shraddha, then we will be caught in this wheel of life, So that is what he's trying to tell here. And then he then comes, what is that secret? That is revealed in shlokas 4 and 5, in which, he brings about the about how his nature is this avyakta, and it is the substratum, and it is the fact that he's asanga, absolutely untouched, undetached. And he is the cause for all this in a very indirect way. Shruti, Sthiti, Laya, Karanam. So all that is described in these shlokas up to almost 9, which is, he starts to say that I am pervading everything, everywhere. I'm the only one. So God in his unmanifest form is everywhere, and everything exists in me, but I do not dwell in them. So it's just like, I mean, again, as a chemist, I can relate to it, is just like how, we say that an atom is almost 99% space, right? So in this, you have all these electrons and protons which are swimming around, right? And if you think about the space, it's in space that everything is there. So all these galaxies, everything exists only in this. So just like that, he says, I do not, they all exist in me. And that is what he's again coming to explain in shloka number 6. But here again, he says, nor do beings exist in me in reality. So this is one of the very powerful shlokas, just like how I remember the shloka number 16, I think in chapter 2, all this trying to show that nor do beings exist in me in reality. Again, what does that mean? He's again trying to show that, again, this is all in your own reality, I'm existing, but in my own, at the level of where I am, this is again Krishna speaking at the highest para, uh, para level, para vidya, that level. He says that, at that level, nothing really exists. So again, connecting it to chapter 7, where he talks about para prakriti and apara prakriti. So this is at the para prakriti level. He says, beings don't exist in me really. So that is the biggest of wonder. And again, when he talks about the wonder part of it, again in chapter 2, he talks about how this knowledge is such a big wonder, So Bhuta, I'm the support, and that is the Jagat Adhishtanam we talked about. And Mamatma Bhuta Bhavana, I myself am the efficient cause. So I'm the Sthiti Laya Karanam, that part of it, he says, is this. And this is the example of the space and the beings in the space, just like wind exists in space. So then the question might arise, is Ishvara the creator of the universe? And this is where he says, at the end of the day, you guys are responsible for your own destiny. I just like he said, the efficient cause. I only provide the reason for your existence. That's all I am. And this example, he says, having animated my own prakriti, I again and again sent forth all this multitude of beings, helpless, avashat, prakritim vashat. We are here mainly because of our own destiny and everything. All that God is doing is providing the reason for the existence. And then what does he really do? So then question might come about. That's why he's saying, even though these things appear to be connected to me, but I am indifferent. Udasinam, I'm totally indifferent to everything. I sit unattached by this. Asaktam teshu karmasu. I'm not really connected in that sense. And because I'm not connected, any kind of actions that happen, I'm not responsible for it. So uh, then what is his role? He says, I'm just like a supervisor. Maya adhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena kaunteya jagat viparivartate. So under me as a super, prakriti produces, because of this, the world show goes on and on. So again, uh, to understand some of these shlokas, the subtlety of mind is very much necessary. To develop the subtlety of mind, one needs to be, at least for some moment of time or in a day, be detached from everything that is going on. And that can start off with just simply sitting down, completely not thinking of any things which is disturbing me or actions and everything. And from there on, getting into a state of meditation. Only then some of these shlokas really makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, it may seem good on paper, it may good in this lecture, but then the practice starts with detaching ourselves slowly and slowly from the material world. The material world will go on. Many times we think that we are the ones who are responsible for certain things. We need to slowly and slowly start to think that I'm not the one who's responsible for things that's happening. When I start to slowly and slowly get that thought into my head, to that extent, my mind becomes calmer and calmer. And slowly and slowly, my mind becomes available for this knowledge. So here in shloka number 11, he starts to talk about, fools disregard me when I dwell in human form. It's a very powerful shloka here, actually. Param bhavam ajananta mama bhuta maheshwaram. What is he trying to say here? This manushim tanum ashritam. Here, he's really asking us to regard all the people with whom we interact with, all the beings with whom we interact with, as none other than that Krishna. Krishna is saying, when I dwell in human form, I am the one in all this. So treat me with love. Treat me, every human being that you interact with me, think that I am that person. But people don't do that. And that is why he calls them mudaha. You know, so muda fool doesn't mean that he's trying to label us or anything. He's trying to say that, hey, I'm coming in front of you all the time in different people, different this one. Just love me, just disregard me in those forms. But unfortunately, people don't do that, and they don't know that I am that God itself in all these beings. So from that point, this shloka is very powerful. And now we come to the next set of things about how, he's saying people don't, again, it's kind of a follow-up on the shloka number 11, as, because people do not even recognize that Lord who's in front. And why do they don't? Because they are really enveloped by this whole glamour, the glitter of our own attachments. And these attachments can be for material objects, it can be for people, it can be our own families. And so that's why he comes out and he says, so from here, I will start to chant again. मोघाशा मोघकर्माणः मोघज्ञानाविचेतसः राक्षसीम् आसुरीं चैव प्रकृतिं मोहिनीं श्रिताः महात्मनस्तु मां पार्थ दैवीं प्रकृतिमाश्रिताः भजत्यनन्यमनसः ज्ञात्वा भूतादिमव्ययम् सततं कीर्तयन्तो मां यतन्तश्च दृढव्रताः नमस्यन्तश्च मां भक्त्या नित्ययुक्ता उपासते ज्ञानयज्ञेन चाप्यन्ये यजन्तो मामुपासते एकत्वेन पृथक्त्वेन बहुधा विश्वतो मुखम् अहं क्रतुरहं यज्ञः स्वदाहमहमौषधम् मन्त्रोऽहमहमेवाज्यम् अहमग्निरहं हुतम् पिताहमस्य जगतः माता धाता पितामहः वेद्यं पवित्रमोङ्कारः ऋक्सामयजुरेव च गतिर्भर्ता प्रभुः साक्षी निवासः शरणं सुकृत् प्रभवः प्रलयस्थानं निधानं बीजमव्ययम् तपाम्यमहं वर्षं निगृह्णाम्युत्सृजामि च अमृतं चैव मृत्युश्च सदसच्चाहमर्जुन. So up till here, we'll just quickly summarize it again. So we saw that how Krishna is saying that the reason why people are unable to recognize him is because it starts with as simple as a desire in the mind. So these desires, when indulged in more and more and more, creates all these mogha, brings about these this moghasha, these useless desires. They lead to all these useless actions, moga karmanaha. And then they all are nothing but of vain knowledge and senseless, like he says, um, senseless. And they are Rakshasim, and they are of the nature of Rakshasas and Asuras, and they verily are possessed of delusion. So, in some sense, he's trying to say how, we are living in this kind of a very illusory world. In this, we are the ones who have created this kind of a world around us, this kind of a cocoon around us. And this world we have created with our own kind of desires, and with those desires, we are constantly acting upon it with attachment. And because of that, our ego, which is becoming our ego, which is of course born through our body, mind, intellect, has become stronger and stronger. And we continue to live in this world. We have to break open this bubble, you know. So that is why he says that, on the other hand, those people who are Mahatmas, very noble souls, they they know that ultimately that this world is a delusion, and the only way I can burst this bubble is I start to look for that God who is everywhere. Like we saw Yathakasho Nivas Tastaha, right? So that God is everywhere. And that God is really the source for my supreme happiness. And my ultimate happiness lies only in Him. But I'm so constantly looking for happiness in these small, small things that I've forgotten about that. But these Mahatmas, they are able to look at it. They know me as the really the permanent aspect of it. And they know that that permanent happiness will never, ever die. And so they are the ones. So he's making that comparison between 12 and 13 here. And then he says, such people, they always spend the time always thinking only about me, glorifying me, and constantly engage. Whatever they do, they are always doing it with an act of worshiping me. So here he talks about the three, the different kinds in which that bhakti is exhibited. And then he says, jnana yajnena chapyanye, they are constantly, they look at this me as that in everybody. So that's where this Vishwato Mukam comes in. They know that I'm everywhere. And then he starts to describe about his own nature, which is everywhere. So he says, I'm in that Vedic ritual. I'm that oblation. I'm that herb. Again, this connection to Brahmarpanam in chapter 4. Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi Brahmagno. So he gives that. And then he says, I am that support, again, that Jagat Adhishtanam part of it, which we saw earlier, which again you see it here. Pita, I am that father, I am that mother, I am that grandmother, I am, so again, that Pavitram, again, I am in all the knowledge. And then he says, I am that ultimate goal, Gati, Bhatta, Prabhu, Sakshi, Nivasa, I am that Nivasaha, I am that ultimate abode, you know, and I am Prabhavaha, I am Pralayaha, so everywhere, and I am that ultimate seed also, and I am Avyayam. So these things are how he describes himself. And then he says, I'm the one who provides the heat, I'm the one who provides the rain, and I'm the one who decides when I have to hold off the rain, who provide the heat. All this, I'm the one. So again, you see how that the description of who he is explained up to chapter 19. So, and then in the next set of shlokas, you see about, who are those people uh, who, uh, who worship him, either in the form of the devatas, or in the form of him itself, and that we will chant now. त्रैविद्या मां सोमपापूतपापाः यज्ञैरिष्ट्वा स्वर्गतिं प्रार्थयन्ते ते पुण्यमासाद्य सुरेन्द्रलोकम् अश्नन्ति दिव्यान् दिवि देव भोगान् ते तं भुक्त्वा स्वर्गलोकं विशालम् क्षीणे पुण्ये मर्त्यलोकं विशन्ति. Evam trayi dharmamanuprapannaha gata kama kama labhante ananyas chintayanto mam ye janah paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham yepyananya devata bhaktaha yajante shraddhayanvitaha tepi mameva kaunteya yajantya vidhi purvakam aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha natu mam abhijananti tatvenata tatvenat tatvenat tatvenaschavanti te Yanti devavrata devan pitrun yanti pitrvrataha bhutani yanti bhutejaha yanti madhyajinopi mam patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktyupahritam ashnami prayatatmanaha यत्करोषि यदश्नासि यज्जुहोषि ददासि यत् यत्तपश्यसि कौन्तेय तत्कुरुष्व मदर्पणम् शुभाशुभफलैरेवं मोक्षसे कर्मबन्धनैः सन्न्यासयोगयुक्तात्मा विमुक्तो मामुपैष्यसि. So going back, again, here he describes about those people who, knowing the Vedas, they actually they go to heaven. But having gone to heaven, they enjoy all these pleasures. But then what happens to them? They come back to the world because they have been focused only upon getting some punyams and going to the heavens. So this such people, until they actually get the royal secret, they get to know about the royal secret, they will be constantly in this cycle, the samsara cycle, like we are saying here. So he says, instead of that, if you were to focus your mind completely on just me alone, I will take care of you. So why are you so worried about, acquiring so much wealth, acquiring so much punyam, all this? What for? When I'm there to take care of you completely, you just focus on me and I will take care of the burden of taking care of your family. So here we had talked about that one beautiful verse about this Brahmin who, kind of doubted. Uh, I mean, there are two versions I've heard about the story. One is he doubted about the power of Krishna to help him, and he gets very angry. But then Krishna comes in the form of a small boy and helps him out. That is one version. The other one was the Damyaham, Ananya Sintayom Paripasate, Vahamyaham. Vahamyaham versus the Damyaham. Here we said Vahamyaham means where Krishna is saying, I take care of your requirements. But then this particular Brahmin, he changed it to the Damyaham. I will give you. But Krishna wants to say, it makes it even more powerful to say that, it's not that I'm going to give you, but I just take care of you completely. So that is the one which in 22 we saw. And then here he says that, well, even if you're not completely devoted to me in my nirguna form, but if you are, devoted to me in many different ways, you are still actually coming to me alone. So you might be praying to the other gods. And here we said other gods could be either the devatas or it could be in the form of supervisors and, our bosses and those kind of things. And then he says, of all the sacrifice, I am the one who is, this is the karta bhokta aspect of God, of the Lord. He says, even though I am the enjoyer, but uh, he's he's actually Rahita, Karta Bhokta Rahita. He is at the highest level. He is not the Bhokta or this one, but at the end of the day, I'm the one who really enjoys all your sacrifices. But this is something people don't know, and they continue to chavanti, which is they continue to keep on falling back to the world. And then even the simplest of things, and here he describes, simple patram pushpam palam toyam. Where is it? Oh, I think I made a mistake here. Ah, no, that's coming up. So, but those people who worship the other gods, they also come to me alone. That's the part. And then here he says, ultimately, I'm the one, you can give something very simple. And even if you don't do that, you can even just do it in your mind. Even that is more than enough. So, and that is why he says, either you can offer something simple if you want, or whatever you do, just offer that to me. Yat karoshi yadashnasi yad juhosi dadasi yatir. I will still take it. And then here he says, Shubha Shubha Palai Revam, I will free you. I'll free you from all the things. And here the Sannyasa Yoga, we have seen these terminologies back in chapter 3 and especially in chapter 6. There's quite an elaboration of the word sannyasa and yoga. Sannyasa is the act of renunciation. Yoga is again the act of integration of the mind and intellect in such a way that it leads us to the higher. And finally, the last section where he talks about the glory, where he's not partial and he will take care of the devotee. And then finally, the qualities. Sammoham sarvabhuteshu na me dveshosti na priyaha ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mayi teshu chapyaham api chet suduracharah bhajate mam ananya bhag sadhureva samantavyah samyak vyavasito hi saha kshipram bhavati dharmatma शश्वत शांति निगच्छति कौन्तेय प्रतिजानीहि न मे भक्तः प्रणश्यति मां हि पार्थ व्यपाश्रित्य ये स्युः पापयोनयः स्त्रियो वैश्यास्तथा शूद्राः तेऽपि यान्ति परां गतिम् किं पुनर्ब्राह्मणा पुण्याः भक्ता राजर्षयस्तथा अनित्यमसुखं लोकम् इमं प्राप्य भजस्व मां मन्मना भव मद्भक्तः मध्याजी मां नमस्कुरु मामे वैश्यसि युक्त्वैवम् आत्मानं मत्परायणः. So this, like we talked about, speaks about the glory of the Lord's worship, how he is the same to everyone. And then he says that, everybody is he's accessible to everybody. And even the most apichet sudurachara, even the most sinful, worships me with devotion to none else. So we saw examples over here. And then he says, this is the verse where I said, he says, Kshipram bhavati dharmatma. The second, I decide to turn my mind towards him, he's there. And for such a person, that devotee is never ever destroyed. And then he says, for taking refuge, who are the different people? We talked about this last week at length. We discussed it. And then he says that, when we talk about people who may have committed all those things, like, the apichet sudurachara, then what to talk about the brahmanas and the devotees? For such people, I'm always there because they really know me in my true essence. And then finally, the 5 qualities, which we talked about last time. Manmana bhava madbhaktaha madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktvavam atmanam mat parayanaha. So the 5, manmanaha, madbhaktaha, madhyaji, mam namaskuru, and mat parayanaha. So all these 5 things we talked about. So ultimately, this chapter is all about the devotion to God. So the So this, we saw in the chapter 7, but it is a lot more emphasized here in chapter 9. And the difference between chapter 7 and chapter 9, of course, in chapter 9, he really brings out the true essence of Parabhakti. And, he wants to also show that Paramatma is not really sitting in the heaven and, he's totally unconcerned and everything, but he's actually very greatly concerned. He's there to help us in every way possible. And that is the Ananyas Chintayanto Mam, which we said. And so, and then he also says that the distance between that Paramatma and the human being is very, very small. Anybody can come to him, and that is why devotion is ultimately the easiest way to get to him. And that is why he describes this devotion in those three different ways, and how also with desires, without desires, all this, he tries to this brings about that highest devotion. But this, you will see this highest devotion, we have seen this in various forms here, but then you will ultimately see that in chapter 11, where you see that, it's ultimately, it is none other than that Krishna, that Brahman, who is shining everywhere and for everywhere in different forms. So we'll see that in chapter 11. So this kind of brings about is finally the summary, and we chanted also. This time I did this a little differently, where instead of chanting the whole chapter together, I wanted to bring that in pieces and chant them and do the summary. So any questions, any thoughts for chapter 9? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a small quick question. So I have noted down here, you said in
1 second, I don't know why my volume is a little low. Let me I'll stop 1 second. I'll stop sharing. Let me increase the volume. That's why. Yeah, go ahead, Meena.
So you said ignorance of my true goal and destination is the problem of our lives.
Gatir Bharta, that one, shloka, right?
Which slokam is that? Can you tell me?
Gatir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi. 1 second, I'll tell you what it is.
Yes, 9:18. 18.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
18.
Yes, 9:18. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what exactly it is? What you're trying to say in this? I mean, I forgot.
Yeah, sure. No worries at all. So, starting with where we are in our own journey of life, right? We set up so many different goals, and we try to reach them, thinking that once I reach that goal, I'm going to be extremely happy, or not extremely happy. I'll be happy, or that will give me the ultimate peace. That's what we look at, and we are constantly working towards it. But those kind of goals are actually very temporary. It gives me the happiness before I go on to the next goal. So our life is based on all these temporary goals, which are giving us this short-term peace and happiness. So Krishna is saying that, focus on me as your goal, because when you fix me as a goal, I am that ultimate peace and happiness. So why are you going for all this temporary happiness? I am that ultimate happiness. So that is why he said, Gatihi Bharta. So I am that ultimate goal. And I am the supporter. Now, supporter Bharta, when we say we look for our own, we are dependent, or we look for support in our own, say, social security. I mean, many of us are close to retirement here. And, we look for a social security pension. We think that is the ultimate support for us. Krishna is saying, okay, you can have that as a support until you have increased your Shraddha in me. Okay. So start to increase the Shraddha in me and consider me as your final support. And that is where that Ananyas Chintayantu Mam comes in, because if you keep me as a support, then I will take care of all your yoga and kshema. So that's where the Bharta he's bringing here. And I'm that ultimate Lord, Prabhu. So that talks about that goal. Then Sakshi, but he says, I am the witness. So I'm not, I'm actually detached from you. So I'm just an observer and I'm a watch for you. Okay. And I'm again, then he comes back again and he says, in connection with this word Bharta, he says, Nivasaha. I am that ultimate board. See, for us, we spend a lot of time in our own homes, decorating our homes. That is because I feel that is my abode. But very soon you'll realize that abode itself is a temporary one. And so he says, I am that ultimate abode. I am that sharanam. I'm that shelter also. And I'm your friend. I'm Suhrit. I'm your bestest friend. If you look at our own lives from the time when we were in kindergarten to where we are today, our friends have constantly been changing. Some of them, of course, we have held on to some of our friends again because we have held on to them because our values. When our value is more of a long term from the time when I'm young, then those friends don't change, right? So here he's trying to say, I am the ultimate friend for you. Then, so those are the qualities. Then he comes with and he says, I am the Prabhavaha Pralayaha Sthanam. That's Sthiti Laya, Srishti Sthiti Laya. We talk about that, right? So I am that ultimate origin that is everything ultimately comes into me only. Okay.
So the best friend that never change in our life.
Correct.
Forever.
Yes.
Okay. Because the quote I wrote down, but I didn't know which sloka you're relating to, so that's why I wanted. Thank you so much for the explanation.
Oh, no problem.
And then the way that you divided and then explained, I mean, all the slokas, if we start chanting, immediately we can recollect what's the meaning of that, what you said. So it's very, very very good. Thank you so much.
Anytime. I just thought, because this chapter is one of the most powerful chapters. Every chapter has a significance in a particular aspect of our lives, Like, for example, when I'm um, young adult, I guess, in a job, trying to make money and rise up and everything. For those, chapter 3, all those things really is greatly appealing. But for us, at a more where we have been in the world, enjoyed it now, slowly our mind has to change, But so in those areas, this chapter 9 is a very, very powerful chapter, very powerful. And some of these shlokas, especially this chapter, shloka number 18, Ananyas Chintayantumam 22, then the last one 34. Those shlokas, if we can just meditate, reflect upon them more and more and more, then what happens is that improves the subtlety of our own thinking. I will constantly keep thinking, okay, really, who is my friend? If somebody behaves badly towards me or whatever, then who is really my real friend? Who is, what am I looking for? Yeah, so all these things are there in this shloka. So very powerful shloka, actually. Thank you for pointing this out. It really, every time, when somebody points, it really makes you feel, makes you think a little more on the purpose of our own lives, I would say.
Hari Om, Sunitha ji.
Hari Om, Anant.
So, as a summary, that the devotion itself is alone is sufficient to reach Paramatma. Is that the one of the essence or messages.
It is absolutely, absolutely. It is the most powerful, most, so knowledge helps us in developing that devotion. So knowledge, this vidya that we are studying through Bhagavad Gita, it is helping me to develop more and more shraddha. And when I have more shraddha, that breaks down any kind of doubts which are in mind and helps me go up the ladder in developing the devotion. So the ultimate aspect of devotion is where I feel that I'm very, very close to that Krishna, and I am none other than Krishna, which will come to much later. But these are steps for devotion. Yes, so chapter 9 is very much talks about devotion, and it is the ultimate. Yes.
Hari Om. This
Before Suvarna, before you go, I just want to make sure, Anant, did that satisfy? Did that help you, or was there
Yes.
something else you wanted to say in this regard?
No, that was very good. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Yes, Suvarna.
Hari Om. This stanza, this verse 18, actually over here in the explanation, in the Swamiji, Gurudev's explanation over here, he says, Lord describes himself with a host of suggestive words strung together to form this executive verse, pregnant and full for all students of meditation. This is like a beautiful indicative, Lord can only, we cannot, we can experience Lord, but there is nothing to, everything is indicative. It is all indicators. So Gati, he's the ultimate goal. That is an indicator. Goal. And then there's Bhatta, the supporter. He's the substratum for everything. Prabhu, he's the Lord. He makes the sunshine. He gives us the rain. He gives us the food. He gives us the patra phala. He gives us everything. He sustains us. He's the sakshi that can. He's who is witnessing everything that is going on. So this, there are even more indicative terms in this particular verse, that actually when you ask for self-reflection, this was the verse that caught my eye and made sense to me. Pick one word. If we say he's the sustain, he's the bharta, he's the support. Yeah, so he's supporting me, he's supporting my family, he's supporting everything and everyone. He's supporting the earth and he's supporting the universe out there. I mean, so it's like, if we can just focus on one word where, and you lose yourself to that meaning as to what all he's supporting, what all is he supporting outside of us, and what all he's supporting within us. The food I'm eating, he's given us the digestive system that will digest the food properly and send it to whatever parts of the body the nourishment needs to go. So it's like he's doing it all, and this was the verse that made a lot of sense to me.
Very good, very good. You're right. It is a very powerful verse.
It also explains
what I felt, that this was definitely a very powerful verse for me, at least.
Great. Yes, Anand.
Hari Om. Yeah, so it explains the entire cycle, like a creation, sustenance, and laya. So he's trying to saying here, like he's everything. Like usually we have the Trimurti, right? Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. Right? So as a Paramatma, the ultimate, he takes care of all the functions. So that's what is emphasizing here.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. That's right. I mean, again, And maybe that is why, again, it is before that shloka number 22, where if he is everything, why are we looking for our yoga and kshema in the world, right? We have to do it until we develop the shraddha, until we improve on shraddha. It's not that we don't have shraddha. We do have shraddha, but that shraddha needs to be redefined, and the shraddha needs to be redirected.
Right. Again, as a kids, again, we were told, like, unity of Shraddha, you study well, but, unity of Shraddha. That's the first thing that comes. So once
Correct.
that is there, then the other things will follow. So,
Correct.
yeah, that's emphasis here.
Exactly.
And somewhere it says Shraddhavan labhate jnanam.
Shraddhavan
That's
labhate
one of the,
jnanam.
yeah.
Yes, exactly. So let me share the last. I know we have few minutes. We will do this. This works. Let's see. Yeah. So ultimately, we said devotion is the ultimate. Are you seeing one screen or two screens?
One screen.
One screen. Okay, good. So let's chant the last shloka here. Om Tatsaditi Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Yogo Nama Navamodhyaya. One second, I just want to make sure if there's a mistake here. Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Guhya Yogo Nama Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yogo Nama Navamodhyaya. So we come to the end of the chapter 9 dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. And it contains Brahma Vidya, and it is Yoga Shastra, which is the Karma Yoga. Both are described in of course, in the whole Bhagavad Gita. That's what he's trying to say. And this particular chapter focused upon the royal secret, and that's why it is Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. And so it is with the grace of Bhagwan and the blessings of our Guru Parampara that we've been able to finish chapter 9. So let's, since I promised that we will start the 10th chapter, at least we'll do a little bit of an introduction, just a couple of minutes. So, so far, we said, this is part of the second part of the three-part series of Bhagavad Gita, which is on focusing on Tat, or that ultimate Lord. And so here in 10th chapter, we are discussing more again about the immanence of God, which is, about the presence of God. So we in the last two chapters, we have constantly been trying to understand that this God is not that God who is in an idol. So again, as Hindus, many times we're criticized for thinking that our gods are there only in idols. The God is there only in the temples, and that is how we worship. And again, because of the plethora of gods that we have created, we are criticized even more. But again, the reason for the plethora of gods is because we want to show that God is everywhere. God is in everything. God is in every being. God is in animals. God is in birds. Again, the story of Akbar and Birbal, right? Where when Birbal is praying to every plant, Akbar gets mad at him, But this is how our Hinduism is, which is that God is everywhere. So it's about the immanence of God. And the reason for that is to show that since God is everywhere, why are we getting stressed out? we can pray to any aspect in front of us, and that will just calm our mind down. So this is the whole idea where 10th chapter really begins. So 10th chapter is all about the glories of God in this whole world. And this, so when, and the chapter is so beautiful because it really takes us to uh, uh, appreciating God in so many different ways. It really it makes us get ourselves attracted to the grandeur of things, to the beauty which we want to look at. It can be as simple as the radiance of the full moon, or it could be the beauty of the ocean. So just trying to get a mind away from this things like today, when again I keep bringing this again and again on how when we see how the younger generations are focusing their mind on, how do we bring their mind away from focusing only on money or their own selves, social media, those kind of things, into more bigger and bigger things. And that's what the 10th chapter is going to bring about. The 10th chapter is really going to bring about this magnitude of beauty which exists around us. And when we see this great magnitude, it really brings about humility within us. There is a humbleness which brings us, and that humility is so, again, very important for us in such a way that we are able to offer that gratitude. It's like, for example, when we see a huge elephant, right? Uh, and we see, I mean, it's as the elephant walks in front of us, it looks so majestic. And it in front of the elephant, we look so small, right? So it's like that. This 10th chapter, by understanding the magnitude and the beauty of it, we really understand our own smallness. We also begin to embrace the beauty and the grandeur, and we recognize that that Lord is somebody who is so very beautiful. And maybe this is why, even Tirupati and everything, the grandeur of that Lord is shown in this majestic Lord Venkateshwara, right? When you see the majestic Lord Venkateshwara, you understand how great this whole world is, right? So that is what we'll be discussing more and more in the 10th chapter. So every verse, again, by seeing the poetry in which Sage Vyasa has brought about this beauty, will help us to calm ourselves down, focus our mind on something which is even more beautiful. So we will start to look at 10th chapter from next week. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhaved. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om. Thank you, Sunitha ji.